Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and well, a butterfly came out.
Welcome to the Comedians and Elevators podcast. I've got my guest Divine here. Divine, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm Divine David Joab. I'm a scriptwriter, also a storyteller, also a songwriter. I write for Kingdom Comics and for Mount Zion, and also for other companies. I write action novels, action stories, comedy, and a lot, a lot of other stuff.
Sure. Sounds cool. Sounds cool. So, the main point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian. So, I define the comic as any person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who's a funny person telling any jokes. And a lot of people will say you start as a comic and you evolve into the comedian. So, the first question is about the role of persona in comedy. So, how much of the comedian's voice is a character versus the real self?
Oh, okay. I'll say, yeah, you have to have your character, your real self in a way has to like be there. So I'll say around like 60% of yourself has to be in it because it has
Mhm.
to be something. I think that's what makes your comedy relatable because that's what makes because you're telling, even though they tell exaggerated stories of things that happen to them, right? But
Mhm.
in a way, they're real stories too. So even though, yeah, some of it is actually like just like I write fiction, and comedians are also writers in their own way. So when you're writing a story, you can put things that you know has happened to you so that it can be relatable. So I would say like up to 60% of yourself has to be there. It has to be, yeah.
60%? Is that so? So, would you say that authenticity matters or is illusion part of the magic?
And is that's why is authenticity matters. It matters actually. It matters, but illusion, like it's just like when they say a good liar, right? They
Mhm.
say a good liar has to mix it with truth, right? That makes you a very good liar. It has to be mixed. So yeah, that's is a mix. Is a mix.
It's a mix, right? So, you're saying 60-40. So, which one is more, which one is more is it the 60% is the liar or is it the other way around?
I think it should be the other way around. The other way
It should be the
around.
other way
It
around.
depends.
So the authenticity is the 60%.
It should be 60. That's for me. It depends, but maybe it works different for someone else, but I think that's how
Okay.
it should be.
All right. All right. So punching up versus punching down. Where do comics versus comedians stand on this? So let's put it in context. Did a jealous medieval prince become the first comedian by killing the court jester?
Well, oh wait, you have to explain more. Let me get what you're trying to say.
Well, we're just putting it in context. So if we go back to medieval times, like where did this whole thing potentially start? Right. This is a theoretical situation.
I get. I wouldn't say like just like the court jesters. I don't know where the whole thing started from, but I say is it has always been like for example in your family there's someone that is just funny, right?
Hmm.
There's someone
Yeah.
you know, so I think it's something that maybe one day somebody just said, well, this can be a profession. This is, since I can make people laugh. There's always someone that's like that, right? So I think I don't know where it started from, but I think it should have been as old as the beginning of man. So right, it has always been there.
Oh, since the beginning of man. So you don't see it as a more of a modern situation?
No, I don't think so. There's always I think it's just there was I believe it's something it's just like all the other natural things that we have like
Hmm.
we have war, we have music, right? It may not sound the same way, but a version of it was there. So yeah, I believe it's as old as the beginning.
Okay. So would you say that the audience agreement with the comedian is a form of permission or alignment?
I'll say both, right? I'll say both because um you know, like you mean like when they like respond to something they said that's very funny or something like that. Um, there's this guy. I think you know him. His name is Anthony. Is it Jeselnik?
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
a he's a
yeah.
so
He's
he tells
go ahead.
dark humor, right? Dark humor, and I'm not someone that is really used to dark humor, but there's a way he says it that makes it so funny, right? So
Yeah.
in that way, you align to it. You just align, like you align to it. It's not like you really, it's not like something that you really just like by yourself. But I align because every time he gets me and he says something that you don't know where he's coming from, you don't know where he's going. That's what makes it funny. That's the character he has chosen. So I'll say is both alignment, and then there are some that is permissive. Maybe they know this person is very funny. They know, but even when he says something that is not that funny, they're still gonna laugh because of the person already. So yeah, it's both ways. I think it's both ways.
That's a great example. So he does use quite often a switch as a joke type. So literally switches it up in as a part of his transition. So a lot of times, if you're not getting it, he'll throw it appears to be he's just throwing those in quickly so that we have something to catch on because those are short kind of jokes. So very interesting that you choose him as an example. All right. So cultural translation of comedy. How do jokes that work in one country bomb in another?
That's where you see that comedies actually work. You have to go and do your homework because something that may be funny in America may not be funny in Russia or in India. You have to understand the culture before but that's where I like comedy also. You may not necessarily need to understand the culture for people to laugh because comedy can, just like this guy that I said about dark humor, right?
Hmm.
You're not used to dark, but when you heard it, you just laughed, right? You can say something in another country, they don't culturally accept that kind of life, but simply because they understand that you're doing a comedy show, it becomes funny. So you can talk like serious issues, like someone can go to like Israel, for example, now with the whole stuff that is happening, right? And
Hmm.
give a joke based on what's going on. It may not be funny outside there, but in that place, it becomes very funny because they understand there's this understanding that is comedy, that kind of thing. So yeah, comedy can be used to communicate very serious issues. Yeah, so yeah, I think, but you have to still do your homework because some things may go too far and they will not really respond well to it. So you have to really do your homework. Yeah, like we see people that get triggered in comedy shows by something that the comedian said. Maybe because maybe by then not really their culture, but they don't really believe in it. So talk less of an entire group of people that will not accept it. So yeah, you have to do your homework. You really have to.
100%. I agree with that. Would you say that comics are more universal while comedians are more culturally specific?
Hmm. I'll say, mm, no, I will say that comedians will be more universal than comics. I'll say that, yeah.
Okay.
I'll put like, yeah, I would say comic. But you said comics are the ones that they tell funny jokes, right?
Right, but they're not necessarily funny as individuals.
Yes, but a comedian is funny, but he knows he's already like the yeah. I think comedians will be the ones that will be more universal than comics. Yeah, I think so.
It's a hard way to look at it because you see them both ways, right? I would argue that you start as a comic and then turn into a comedian because you do still want to tell jokes. So
Yeah,
maybe there's a long tail to that, right?
yeah,
Okay, so crowd work versus crafted work. I argue if a comic riffs, like in crowd work, like influencers, for example, and comedians perform, like in reaction videos, where is the sweet spot?
sorry, can you give more clarity? Let me understand.
Right. So if we think about like some more of the techniques, I argue that the comic will riff. He will do more off script, more improv type of work with the audience, and also in video they'll do like influencers for companies and stuff. And then comedians will do more perform like in reaction videos, like their opinion matters actually more than than the audience that they've cultivated. So the question is where's the sweet spot?
When you say sweet spot, what do you mean?
Well,
Like
there's a
25?
balance. There's a balancing act between, you having, influencers or people following, kind of randomly almost, like it's just another thing to follow versus watching someone's reaction, like watching someone's opinion about a particular topic. So, it
Oh,
kind of bounces between the two. Some people just do one or the other.
I get what you mean. I would say well, it's just like what I said, right? It's it's I can't really I can't really really know how to answer it, but just like when I was saying that like that's why I like comedy because it's you may not really think too much deep about it, that kind of thing. It's just like the comedian that has their opinion on stuff and all those kind of things. I would just say it depends on how the deliverance. I think the balance is how you deliver whatever it
Mhm.
is. How you deliver is how you present whatever it is, whether it's an opinion, whether you are performing, whether you are going off script. It's just your deliverance. I think that should be the sweet. It's your deliverance, the way you
There
deliver
you
something. Yeah.
see, that's if I don't make the questions difficult, you wouldn't come up with the goal. The answer is about the delivery, right? To see
I
these
get it.
minor differences between the two. So what happens when a comic leans too much into crowd work or when a comedian gets heckled?
Oh, well, you see, everything is like for the comic, right? Especially when you said that, they may be starting out, right? For the comic, if you lean too much into the crowd work, you really have to be good. Like comedy is psychology, right? Is
Hmm.
there's a psychology behind it, right? You have to know how to because that's why to me, I believe not everybody can do it. It has to be natural. There are people that they have never been comedians, right? But when you give them a stage, they know how to improve. Everything they do just makes sense, right? And then there's an understanding, especially as a comedian, you get to a point that when from coming from a comic to a comedian, you get to a point that you now understand the psychology of how people react to things. You know what to say, even as simple as your silence is something that people will start reacting to and laughing. Then for a comedian that gets heckled, well, that's where also your own creativity has to be because when you get heckled, you have to, I've seen comedians turn it around when they get heckled. It's still a lot of psychological work. So you have to know how to control is you have to know how to control the crowd, control the people's mindset of things. So you have to do basically both ways. They have to do a lot of psychological development, and that may come with many mistakes at first, but from there on, you keep on learning. Yes, so that's it.
I'm with you on that 100%. Okay, so advertising and self promotion. Who advertises themselves more, the comic or comedian? You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast and get the message out today. See you soon.
Hmm. I'll say the comic. It's the
Well,
comic.
why is that?
Um, just like is they have to um like especially when you say when if I want to go on the point that you said that they are just like the comic is starting and they end up as comedians, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is Mm. You know, when you have to like when you have to like sell yourself as a comic, right? Since you're not really you said you're not really that you're not really that like you're not funny per se, but you tell funny jokes. So you have to do a lot of selling. You have to really sell yourself, right? But a
Okay.
comedian that a comedian like may not really necessarily they already have this confidence. They know that they are funny, right? They may not really need to do much of the selling because it already speaks for them, right? It speaks for them. Like we know, like we have seen people in our lives that tell something that say something once in a while that is funny, right? And
Mhm.
then we have seen people that they are funny just entering the room. You just laugh seeing them. So who is going to do more of the work if he wants to sell himself? It's going to be the guy that knows that he's not that funny, but he can tell some funny jokes, that kind of thing. But someone that, yeah, so I believe the comic. The comic sells themselves more.
I love this. This is the best answer I've heard so far. Agree with you 100%. The comic has to work at it. And the
Yeah.
comedian perhaps did work at it to get to where he is, knowing that, I think you can learn to become a funny person that way. But I'm with you on that 100%. So, is self-promotion seen as selling out, or is it necessary for survival?
It's necessary. There's no one thing that like let me go like as a music artist, one thing I've learned is that you can never like really overdo it really. You have to is what makes people sometimes even the comedian has to keep on selling themselves. They have to self promote themselves. They really have to because it, some people are not really that funny, but why they make it is because they keep on appearing. You
Hmm.
keep on seeing them. That is why they make it. There are other people that are out there they're so funny, more funny than any other comedian you have seen, but they don't market themselves. So it is you have to understand that you have is that's why in anything you're doing you have to learn marketing. Marketing you have to know how to market yourself. That's the thing. It's very important. People they are very talented, they are very good, but they don't know this importance of selling themselves. So yeah, they have to actually do it. It's necessary.
Yeah, and not only necessary, but to do it is, it generates more value than if you didn't, right? So,
Yeah.
all right. So censorship and offense. Does a comic avoid offense while a comedian courts it to prove a point?
I think a comic will avoid. They will avoid offense because they're just like what you just said. They're just starting, right? They
Mhm.
are they're trying to, especially when you're just trying to say things that are funny. You're not funny, right? You're trying to say things that are funny. You're trying to get there to the moment you're funny. But when you're trying to say things that are funny, you tend to want to just avoid some um like displeasing the crowd in something. But comedians get away with in fact comedians get away with a lot. Like there are a lot of things social issues they talk about, things they talk about, they get away with it. And that's why I like comedy because as a comedian you can really pass messages that are very serious but in a very creative way. So only few people you get once in a while you get someone that will react to it angrily, that kind of thing, but you will see just like one person, not even like the whole crowd or anything. So yeah, I think the comic will try to be more careful, but the comedian will not really like they really tend to not really care too much about you censoring them or anything like that. Yeah.
I agree with you on that one. So, who survives better in a cancel culture environment?
He's the comedian.
Okay.
He's the comedian. Because
Okay.
yeah, he's the comedian. He's the comedian because a comic, you're still careful. And especially when you're just starting, right? You're going to be careful. You say the wrong thing. Like David Chappelle can say something, right?
Mhm.
And someone else that is starting up can say the same thing and there'll be a different reaction, right? Because he's already like, he's funny. Just he can speak about things that, like for example, the other day I was hearing him tell a joke about drills in schools, right? Like he was like, "Why are you guys doing drills in schools and all this kind of stuff?" And naturally, someone would think that, "Oh, but it's important." But he made a joke out of it, right? Now, someone else would do that same joke that someone like a comic that maybe has not yet gotten there will do that same joke, and someone will challenge him there because they will try to show him the importance of the drills and everything, that kind of thing. He will not even want to go in that direction. So yeah, I think the comedians they get away with it. Yeah, they get away with it.
Okay. All right. So timing and delivery, is it a science or an art? So let's put it in this context. Do comics rely more on structure, and comedians more on rhythm and emotion?
Hmm. Wow. Um, I think yeah, comics will rely more on structure. They will rely more on structure. But comedians, at that point is who they are, right?
Mhm.
So it, it's just like when you're dealing with your friends, you know how to talk around them, you know how to say that will make them laugh. You know what? So you're dealing with like the emotions, and you're just more free. But a comic has to really be they'll start constructive. Is as they continue going on, they'll start loosening up, becoming funny themselves. They start to loosen up, right? But at first, at that stage of just being a comic, they have to be very constructive. Comedians still use constructive ways, but they are more free, they're more flexible in it, right? They're more very flexible in it. So yeah. Even most of the things that comedians say may not be intentionally what they wanted to talk about. So yeah, it's something I think comics will be more constructive, but comedians will be more like they're more free using their emotions and everything. Yeah.
So maybe that's because the comedian has already figured out the structure and it's a very simple one. It's not a complicated set
Yes.
of parameters. All right.
Yeah.
So laughter versus applause. So are comics chasing laughs and comedians chasing applause breaks that validate the message?
Okay. Now when you say laughter or applause, you say comics chase what?
Laughs and comedians are chasing applause breaks. So a theoretical, like what would you think that the goals of these two are if they're different?
Well, I think is is I think everyone will like an applause, but I think a comic will be happy like when people laugh because that's what they was. I think both of them actually chase like the same thing. If you ask
Mm.
me, it's the same. Is still the same thing. Both the comic and the comedian, they will actually chase the same thing, right? The applause is very good. There's at the because when you're in the show, you get laughs, that kind of thing. Then you get some applause, that kind of. So I think basically they still both chase the same thing, both laughs and applause. Yes.
Fair enough. So comedy is commentary. So when does a comedian cross into becoming a philosopher or a preacher?
No, yeah. I think if you really listen well, like if you
Mhm.
really listen well at their shows, you see that most of them already are. The most of them already. I won't say most of them, right? But you can't really tell with comedy. You can't really tell except you listen well. But in a way, they try to pass you a message without, they try to preach something to you.
Mm.
So sometimes you can't really tell. But if you listen well, you know that okay, this is what is trying. Like for example, you can make a joke about why Palestine is wrong, right?
Mhm.
I can make a joke like that, right? The real thing I'm trying to actually do is trying to tell people in a way that Palestine is wrong. Let me put it like that. But you know that some will not get it, right? Even though they laugh about it, even though people laugh knowing it's comedy, it may still register in their mind that what you're saying is true. So it's hard to really tell when they are preaching, but if you listen well, you actually hear the preachers among them. So you have to really be a good listener and not just laugh everything away, but you have to really listen well. You can tell it by their emotions and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. When the concept like they layer it to a point where you have to think later about what the conclusions are logically to what was said, right? At first, at the moment, you're laughing because it's structured as a joke, but it's also structured as a commentary that you have to actually reflect on later, of course.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So, is that good or does it dilute the humor?
I believe I know maybe not everyone has this opinion, but I'm going to be honest. There is no one in the industry that is not trying to pass a message. Even the person that is trying to do things based on not trying to pass any message is passing a message. Is passing a message of no message. Do you get it?
Sure.
Everyone is trying to like pass the message. So the truth, the honest truth, is that as a comedian, as a writer, or whatever it is, you have to have a message. Some may agree with it, some may disagree with it. But just try to have a good message. That's the thing. But don't always make it about the message. Don't always make it about passing messages. Sometimes people just want to laugh. All right.
Right.
So it's not necessary that every time you want to just like say something that is preaching to people, just like you once in a while, you know that yes, because you're a person, you have beliefs. So yeah, you try to pass your message once in a while, but when you overdo it, it becomes everybody actually does pass a message one way or the other. Everybody does.
All right. So, comedy and vulnerability. I would argue that comics hide behind their jokes and comedians expose themselves. So, if you believe that, which one is braver?
I think the well, I think the comedian has become more bolder because of experience, right? So, yes, comics they'll hide behind the joke, right? But they're still trying to come up. So I won't really judge them like I won't really judge it on them like that. But I would say the comedians have become bolder. They have become bolder because experience and all that, and they're naturally like funny, so they have more boldness in that area. May still be trying to try things out, right? Like, so yeah, I say the comedians are more bolder.
I think I was leading the witness on that question. All right, last question. So, legacy. Who gets remembered? Will the comics Tight Five survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
Wait, sorry, I didn't get it. I didn't, it's cut off. What was the question?
Will the comics Tight Five survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
I think the comedian's point of view will be more timeless. Yeah, yeah, the comedian's point because what they say, like what we were talking about that I said about them with they use more of like them that they are putting themselves there, right? So anything that a comic may say something that is funny, but it may not really, it's not something that will last because it's not really with their emotion and everything. So a comedian puts themselves there in their words in whatever they say. So they'll be more timeless and remember because their soul is in it. So yeah.
All right, all right. Well, Divine, thank you so much for being my guest. Where can everybody find you online?
You can find me at Divine Universe on Facebook, or you can find me at u.divine on Instagram. So yeah, that's me.
Very cool, very cool. Well, again, thank you for being my guest. And for everyone, please like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.
Yeah, thank you very much.